Last week when we talked, I told you that you didn't have a discipline problem. I told you that the real problem was separation and disconnect. And when we last talked, I talked about 4 different phrases that we use often in our self talk that really reveal the root. Today, we're going to dive deeper into the first phrase. And often we think this first phrase is so harmless. That's just how I am. That's who I am. I'm not a runner. I'm not a creative person. These little phrases that we say about ourselves. 5 words, and those 5 words have costed me more than any other words that I've said. The last video, I talked about how for the past 4 years I've worn a dad hat. I told myself that I was a good dad, and I am, but somewhere along the way, good dad became the ceiling instead of the floor. The bar for fatherhood in this day and age is so low that it became my prison. Go up, be present, don't leave. And I looked around and I saw what dads were doing. And I said to myself, I'm ahead of them. I'm doing that. I'm better than that. I'm a good dad. I'm good. But like I said, presence without transformation is just attendance. I was in the room, but I wasn't growing. I was wearing that dad hat like I was the finished product, like the identity was complete, and it protected me. Because as long as I'm the good dad, nobody else can ask me what else I'm not becoming. That's just who I am. That's just how I am. I'm a good dad, a present father. And it felt like gratitude. But looking back on it, it was a cage and a prison and a lie that I told myself because God didn't call me to just be present. God called me to be transformed. God called me to be the best version of myself. Here's something that I've never talked about on camera. When I started my professional career, I worked at a company called Ultimate Software, UKG now. You might see them on the Miami Heat jersey. And I was a business analyst that caught the eye of senior leadership, and they pulled me up. They pulled me up with them, not to lead, but to support. I was the guy behind all the decision making, the analyst that made the leaders look good. And you know what? I was great at it. So great that it became who I was, who I became. I felt value and gratification from it. I was the one that made things run. I was the one that made the leaders make the right decisions. I was the one that made sure we were operating smoothly. And I got credit for it. I was the one who executed someone else's vision. But it left me feeling a certain void inside, and I didn't feel complete. I hit rock bottom. I talk about this often. I left corporate. I left that world. But I carried that identity with me, right? You know, as I became a father, as I explored this whole world outside of my corporate life, you know, I bounced business ideas with friends and business owners. But I always caught myself saying, hey, I'm not the content guy. I'm not the guy, the face of a brand. I'm not a creative guy. And I always said, let me just help someone else build a brand. I helped an old buddy of mine build a gym brand. I helped another buddy of mine build his personal training brand. I had ideas. I had a message, but I always shied away from it. I always said that I'm the support guy. And that traces back to my corporate roots and those origins of my identity being formed there. And that kept me behind the scenes because the corporate ladder rewarded that version of me. So it must be true. They pulled me along for the ride. They gave me all the props and they gave me the spotlight. Same pattern, different room. An external system told me it was who I was. My boss, the senior leaders, the VPs, they're like, good job, go you. So I stopped questioning it and it became what I thought it was self-awareness. I thought that was who I am. Ephesians 2:10 says that we are God's handiwork, not that we are on our way or we are gonna be if we try hard enough. That we are, present tense, that we've already attained it. Already true. We've already won. So when I said that I am just the support guy, God never agreed to that. I made that decision, but who am I to say that? When I said that, I was a good dad, and that was enough. I didn't come to terms with God. God didn't say and give me the final sign off to say, hey, that's who you are and that's who you'll become. And that was it. That wasn't it. That wasn't the deal. God never agreed to that either. Those weren't identities. They were agreements that I made with myself, with my subconscious. And it was agreements and negotiations and tactics that I made with myself without consulting God, without consulting the architect. You know, last week we talked about neuroplasticity and we said that it trains the brain and it proves that the brain rewires around the way that we think, around the stories that we repeat to ourselves. When we say that's just who I am long enough for many years, for decades, the neural pathways becomes hardened around it and it becomes your literal operating system and it becomes your reality. The brain can rewire. But Romans 12:2 says that you can be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The brain can rewire. But the question is, what is it rewiring towards? Towards who you want to be or towards who God made you to be? There's a difference. That's the gap. That's the disconnect. The person that Aileen Gu described, I can become exactly who I want to be. That self-source renewal, Paul's renewal, is God-sourced. Tapping into God's word. One was a better version of yourself, but one demolishes prison entirely and brings down absolute constructs and aligns everything in life towards it. So here's what I'm doing. I'm cutting that branch right now on video, publicly, on camera, for the first time talking about it, to now just letting that identity go. I am not the support guy. I am more than that. I am the man that God designed me to be, to lead with my own voice, to be the best dad to my kids, to be the best version of myself. I'm not just a good dad. I'm not just a father. I'm not just an athlete. I'm not just a runner. I am a father in transformation. And the proof isn't in just some new version of myself in the future. It's the fact that I'm here right now in front of the camera saying this because the man that says that I'm not the main character or I'm just the support guy would not be here doing that. The fact that I'm sitting here right now is proof. And that's one branch that we've talked about in detail. Next week, we'll talk about the phrase, I don't have time. You have time for everything that you actually believe that you deserve. And if that stings, good. That's the disconnect that we're talking about. What's one thing that you've accepted about yourself that God never agreed to? Drop it below. We're cutting them out one at a time, together. Total alignment protocol.